Hello, lovely people. I thought I'd come on here and try and do one of these kind of vlog type videos. It doesn't come naturally to me, as you can probably tell, but I would like to, in 2025, make more of these kind of videos because it's the sort of video that I tend to watch on YouTube and kind of chills me out. So I thought I'd have a go myself. So I apologise that I'm not very slick on here at all. Hopefully the more of these I do, the more confident I'll get. But I thought a good conversation to have to begin with would be about the new colorization of the War Games that I saw last night that came to the BBC as a bit of a Christmas bonus to us Doctor Who fans. I have made some notes, but not extensive. But I thought I'd share what my feelings are about the show itself. It's the second of the recent colorizations. I'm sure there've been lots of colorizations before, but this is the second one in recent history. They did the Daleks as well, which I did like. It had many of the same things that I thought about this show, which I'll go into in a minute. But overall, I really enjoyed that re-edit, but I'm also glad to have the original to go back to, and that's kind of how I felt about this one as well. This is the longest surviving story. I know there's also the Dalek Master Plan, which was 12 episodes long, but I think only 2 of those episodes survive in the archive as we know it. I'd love to see them do an animation of the whole thing at some point, because that's a really interesting story as well from the first Doctor's tenure. But this is a 10 episode story, which is, I did the maths and I think it's 241-ish minutes, which they've shrunk down to 90 minutes. So you've lost a good 2.5 hours less? Sorry, my maths is not great, but yeah, you've lost about 2/3 of the story in this re-edit. So obviously that isn't going to suit everybody who is a fan of the original story. And just starting with that, with the edit, I thought it was quite accessible for people who'd not seen the story before, and I think it'll probably bring a lot of new fans to the story, which is great, because it is one of Troughton's most best stories and one of the most important stories, because spoiler alert, it introduces the Time Lords, or at least the name of the Time Lords. We've had the meddling monk before in Hartnell's time, and he had alluded to the fact that he wasn't human, but I don't think he'd ever said that he was a Time Lord or from Gallifrey. The name Gallifrey comes later on in Pertwee's era, I believe. But this is the first time that we've been to the Doctor's planet and that we've heard that name, the Time Lord. So super, super important. Also, it's super important because it's Troughton's last episode story, and it's also the last in black and white up until now. And it is also the last of the 60s. So a lot of that first classic run of black and white Doctor Who comes to an end with the War Games. We get a brand new Doctor after this. We get a brand new production team, do we? Yeah, I think pretty much. Terrance Dicks co-writes this one, so he is. I think he does carry on into the Pertwee era. But yeah, there's a huge change in the production and style of the show straight after this. So this is the last of those kind of 60s first and second Doctor style stories. So yeah, it's hugely important for the show itself. But yeah, the edit itself, I enjoyed watching it as an edit. Again, I'm glad I've got the original. There was a little bit of padding, as you can imagine, in a 10-part show, a 10-part story. There's always going to be a little bit of padding, a lot of something that the classic era sometimes struggles with, is that kind of being captured, then escaping, then being captured again. That happens in quite a few stories, including this one, I believe. But I do love it as the full story, and you do feel like you're missing, quite understandably, they're getting rid of like 2/3 of the story, so you do feel like you're missing quite a lot, and it does feel like it's going from climactic, is that the word, climactic? Yeah, climactic scene to climactic scene, almost like it's going straight from one hyper moment to another hyper moment. So it does kind of rush it a little bit. But like I say, I think that people who enjoy the modern show are going to find this more palatable in that style. But I do think you lose quite a lot on the way. But I do admire them for trying to do this, and I did enjoy it overall. I wasn't nitpicking too much. I was just enjoying it as a feature length episode. And yeah, I know I'll end up buying it again on the DVD or Blu-ray when they bring out the colour version, because no doubt there'll be some great extras to go with it. Some other parts of this tale. So the most important thing, apart from the re-edit, is the colour. What did I think of the colour? Well, my wife watched this with me, and she's always a good litmus test for the show, because she's not as much of a Doctor Who nerd as me. So you tend to get really good first impressions from her. And she was saying, "Oh, it doesn't look like modern colour. It looks more like the Pertwee era." And yeah, I kind of could see that. It made it feel more like a Pertwee era story. There were still quite a few differences in the production, but yeah, it did have more of a Pertwee feel to it, with this kind of like a 70s era colour. And yeah, overall, I know there'll be quite a few criticisms about some of the liberties that were taken, especially towards the end, which I'll come back to. But overall, I think they were fairly respectful with the new artistic license that they took. The special effects, for example, most of them were kind of era. They looked like the era they were from. I really liked the model shots that they did, which had a real Jerry Anderson Thunderbirds feel to them, which fitted in really nicely with the 1960s production. And I don't know necessarily that new people watching it would know that those were new model shots. The spinning TARDISes, TARDI, whatever the plural of TARDISes, did look a bit more CGI to me. But again, you could kind of get away with it. It does look a bit more like a model shot, so that worked really well. A part that did jar a bit for me, and I don't know if it's the way my sound is set up, but the music, again, same as the new re-edit colorized Dalek story, the music was very overpowering to me. And again, this may well just be my sound setup, so apologies if that's the case. But the music, it was okay. It worked in some parts, but it was very not over the top, but there was a lot of it. I don't think it was very rare to have any kind of scene without some sort of music punctuating it, which was quite different for the classic Who. You don't always get like masses and masses of background music, so that was a little bit jarring for me. They used quite a lot of synth music, which felt more 70s and 60s. I know there were some synths in the early synths in the 60s, of course, but it did give it again more of a Pertwee feel than a Troughton feel, I thought. But again, not ridiculously 80s or 90s synths. It did feel more like a 70s synth, quite a lot of it, so that worked quite well. Did you notice as well that they used the Masters theme? That was quite cool for the war chief. My wife said at one point, "Oh, is that the Master?" when it was the war chief, and you can see why she thought that, because obviously he had that great sort of half moustache thing going on, which looked very Delgado. But yeah, obviously this is just before the Master was introduced, about a year or so after this. But you can see why someone would who was a bit more new to the show would think that he was quite mastery, and they did play the Masters theme as well, which helped with the confusion. But yeah, I thought the music was very overpowering. It was well written, and props to the people who wrote it, but I found it distracted quite a lot from the dialogue at times. The special effects mostly were good, some a little bit jarring. And this brings me on to one of my main criticisms of the story, which was how they kind of tried to shoe in some of the more modern elements. So there was a part where it had a landscape of Gallifrey from the modern show into it, which I thought was, I don't know. It was that was kind of cool. I could kind of almost go along with that, but yeah, that was a bit jarring. But the really jarring bit was where they shoe-inned the other doctor. So like they had the 12th, they had the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th, I think, doctors. When Troughton gets to decide what look he wants to go for, and he's like, that one's too old, and then it showed Capaldi, and that one's too young, and or too thin or something, and they showed David Tennant. That one's too young, and they showed Jodie. So that was I don't know, it felt a bit jokey for me. And yeah, I realised that scene itself is quite silly in a way. It's quite a silly regeneration, isn't it, when Troughton's doing the whole it's making me feel giddy, that bit. But I didn't really... Was that necessary? I don't know. But that brings me on to the new regeneration, which I'm kind of in two minds about. On the one hand, I think it was really nicely done. I loved there was some shots of Pertwee. I don't know if they were taken from... Were they taken from Spearhead from space? I'm not sure, but yeah, really nice shots of him, and it was quite convincing actually when they did the kind of modern regeneration from Troughton to Pertwee. I thought that was quite interesting and really well done actually. I don't know if it will be to everyone's taste, because again, it's done in a very modern style. But I think, yeah, I don't know how that one will go down. I quite liked it. It would have been quite nice. I was looking out to see if Troughton had like grey hair on it, because that would fit in nicely with the season. Is it 6B or whatever? The idea that he was taken off by the Time Lord to do various things before he regenerated, which is why you see him older in like the two Doctors and things like that. But yeah, one thing I did really like, which was a real poke at some fan confusions, is when he landed in the field that he ends up in, Spearhead from space, and it says it sort of flits, the time regulator goes wrong and it flits between 1970 and 1980. I thought that was proper clever. If you don't know what that's all about, it's the Pertwee era of the show. There's been some confusion about whether that took place in the 70s or the 80s, and that was really confused by Mordrin Undead as well when he talked about being in it being in the 70s, but at the time the episodes say they're in the 80s. I don't know, but anyway, it was a nice nod to that. I thought that they tried to explain that away. That was really funny, I thought. Overall, the colorization was done really well. It shows up a lot of the sins of black and white. I always prefer black and white. Well, sorry, no, I don't always prefer, but these black and white shows, I do like watching them in black and white, and I do think sometimes it helps you to suspend your disbelief. I think there were some scenes on Gallifrey in particular, the unnamed Gallifrey as it were, that it looks like shower curtains, whereas the walls look like shower curtains, where in black and white it's got this kind of, gives it a sheen and a shadow, which is really nice, but in colour it looks more plasticky. But they did an amazing job, I think, of colorizing it, and I think the re-edit and the color will totally re-engage a lot of fans who've not managed to see the story or been overwhelmed by the 10 episode runtime to really get into what is one of Troughton's best and one of the best stories of the entire classic run. So that's my feelings on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below as well. So if you can you can stomach these kind of videos where I'm talking to camera, and you'd like to see some more, you'd like to hear me review or chat about other nerdy topics like this, then yeah, let me know in the comments below. It'd be nice to hear from you. And as always, thanks very much for watching, and take care.